basically have I always put my horizon line first, so I'm seeing it as approximately a third of the way up. I'll divide that and put my horizon line. I'll kind of figure where these large shapes are and kind of, I'm more of a realist, an impressionist realist than I am a loose impressionist, so I try to get as much accuracy as I can. But I can see the top of that is about less than about a quarter of the way through. Divide. I put my horizon line way too low, but I will get it re-established. And it doesn't have to follow the photograph exactly, but I want to kind of get the simple shapes in here. I'm almost basically drawing the painting as I'm laying it in. So I've got these forms. I know this is about 30% of the way up.
Fernando, can you please tell us what makes you?
Right now, I'm using a little bit of ultramarine, some white, and just a touch of alizarin print, which is my cool red.
And you are painting in oils, correct?
I'm painting in oils, yes.
What is the gel made
It's a gambling, what do you call it? I can't remember the name of it. Solvent-free gel, right, made by Gambling. Establishing some of the things in drawing, trying to get as much accuracy, but not totally fixated on that. But I have my distant cliff back here, my middle cliffs, and then some foreground rocks that I'm going to just lay in. And those are my darkest darks. And I'm using a value I should probably go a little darker. So I have a little more alizarin, maybe a touch of yellow in there to get more of a gray scale, because these cliffs have a real, they're not black, they're not blue, they're a lot of mixtures of color. But I want to get a sense of the reality of the grays early on and the value especially. Let's see what that looks like. That's probably a little better. Added a touch of yellow, which tends to gray things out. If you use all three of the primary colors, blue, red, and yellow, you get gray or black, depending on how you mix them. That's white, obviously, you get a darker tone.
Fernando, did you ever paint in acrylic before you went to oil?
I have not. I did not. I started painting after I retired for 36 years as a landscape architect. So this is kind of fairly new to me. I've been painting almost 10 years, and it's come to a point where I'm confident actually in mixing things. I'm not worried so much about that, but I'm actually emphasizing the design. So I can see I've done all this wrong because I was starting talking without really thinking. So I'm going to just lay in those new reestablish. I can do this early on, reestablish these portions and still create what I'm trying to do. I can use a little of the Gamsol. This is all just the drawing stage phase of this painting. Sorry, I'm just like nonchalantly painting these things. I apologize.
That
But I
means
feel
you're in the
relaxed.
zone.
I just
I
had
like
lunch.
that. If you got your hand in your pocket, you're in the zone.
That's right. So I'll just keep going. That makes a nice pool of color, but I can keep adding and seeing where I have to go to get the dark value that I really want. I'm going to try to get a little faster in here. That's much better. Just drawing with my brush here. Got this one little section here. Leave it alone. It's a backlit scene, so there's a lot of light coming from the upper back distance. So I'm getting these highlights on these rocks, which add to the contrast of the values. So I see it's a lot of shadow in these paintings. I'm just going to try to celebrate it. Like this rock back here, a little lower on the horizon, but he wants to be pretty close to where this rock is on this left side. So I'm going to not emphasize this rock as much as I am. I'm trying to get my viewer to look through the painting and into the distance and come around. So if I emphasize this rock on the right, it's not a good situation because you have too much to view. I'm going to try to de-emphasize that a little bit. Get more of that blue in there. Are any of you plein air painters?
Yes,
Great.
sometimes.
Yeah,
Used to be. Used to be a lot.
fantastic.
Yeah, you do the beach too.
Yeah,
It's great. Yeah, see too.
Michael Situ? Yeah, he's a wonderful artist.
Oh my God. This is like nice around it. How is he?
Is it?
Are you
What's that?
showing up at the festival this year?
Yes, he is.
Are you?
All right, I'm a Sawdust artist.
Okay, I'm
Sawdust
listening.
Festival, come by there and check it out.
I
I've been
will.
there for almost, it's a month, my man.
I love him.
Yeah.
How about Kirkhoff? Is he gonna be at the festival?
He does the festival, yes.
I hope so.
You know, I'm not sure if he's gonna be there this year. Sometimes it takes sabbatical.
I encourage you.
But, yeah, should be fun.
Oh, I know.
Probably emphasizing That's okay. For this nature of this painting, we'll just call it. You see what I mean by ugly stage? Doesn't amount to anything right now. I'm trying to bring these values in here a little bit. So if you squint, I have these shrubs and the cliffs in there, but if you squint, they're very close to the same value. And I'll bring this shrub over here a little more forward. Shrubs, ground cover, whatever they are, they seem to be. I used to be a landscape architect, so I call them shrubs. Back to that. And finish this section.
So when you say you de-emphasize areas of the painting that aren't your focus of interest, you just put less detail in them?
Less emphasis. I mean, when I get into the final stages, I'll try to figure out what I want the viewer to engage in. And what happens with, in order to do that, what happens is you either have more contrast, your lightest lights against your darkest darks. That visually, we're all trained as human beings and animals to see the contrast in the jungle, right? To see a tiger go through a grass field. That's what we focus on is the contrast, the chroma, the color versus the desaturated and grayer, distant, non-important things. Because when we're looking out in nature, we're only seeing 15% of what we're looking at any one time. We have a cone of vision of 15%. So we de-emphasize other things. You see that pretty parrot in the tree, that's colorful, the contrast with the green of the tree, because everything else goes into defocus. And that's what we're trying to do, is create a three-dimensional illusion on a two-dimensional plane. In order to do that, we use those tools. We use those techniques, I should say. Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be a little different than the sketch I have, but that's okay.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Be creative.
Be creative, yeah. Exactly. Kind of, sort of. Kind of liking it. This shape may be too big over here because I'm repeating. So I don't want to have that shape and that rock look the same. This is much bigger in the distance. So I need to emphasize that. Because if I have objects that are the same size next to each other or repeating, that's, doesn't happen in nature really. You know, there's always variation in shapes and forms and mass. So I want to create that rock, a little bit more emphasis on that rock there. And I have all these other rocks in here, but what's good about these rocks here is they're kind of lead-ins to the scene, to the perspective. All these little dark masses here follow through and tends to bring your eye around. It's just, you know, compositional trick, basically. And I can emphasize that by the linearity of those rocks. But I don't want to make them equidistant. I want to vary those shapes. And now I'm just going to like get the feel of these rocks going. The masses in there of the rocks going through, but I don't want to detail every little thing. I know now it's probably a good time to just go and into the distant cliff there.
Is it that cliff on the left side? Is that, you have a few strokes into the white down below, down below?
Here?
Yeah, up there. Is that a cliff or those the islands of rock?
These are cliffs, and these are just little rocks that have crumbled off
Where's
of
the
the
cliffs?
cliffs. Woods Cove in Laguna Beach.
Okay. Did it break apart? It's been a while since I've been there.
Oh, yeah, it's constantly shifting, that's for
Yeah.
sure.
It used to be just gorgeous.
Yeah,
You have to make it up now.
exactly.
And you gotta remember.
You can look at the old masters paintings like William Went
Yeah,
and
when,
Couperin and all the guys that painted there and see what it looked like 100 years ago.
it's different.
But, you know, what we're doing is basically, we're time capsules when we paint. We're painting what we see at the moment. 100 years from now, they'll look at our paintings and say, oh, I was there, that doesn't look anything like it. Because everything is eroding, evolving. You know, the world that changes, trees grow over things, houses are demolished. So we're just, it's a little bit of a time capsule is what we're doing.
A moment in time.
Moment in time.
Go lighter.
Okay. Get my bigger brush here. And I'll create a pool of color for the sky. It starts with a little bit of a tinge of yellow in the distant sky. Little bit of a warm color, warmish green yellow. I'm going to lay that in at the bottom of this area here. I've got brand new brushes for you guys, so I'm fighting through them because they're all glued together. Not as flexible as I'm used to. Lighter. And I'm continuing to draw the scene. even with my paint. Even though I've laid out the dark shapes, I reestablish some shapes too with the paint. I can do this at this stage and still get this scene to work better. Get my horizon line. Oftentimes, the first pass is not going to be your final pass. You keep looking at it, comparing to what you're seeing out in the scene, and you keep working at it. I brought my horizon line much higher, so that's a little different. That's not me, is it? No. May not look anything like it, but we'll come in with another pass and make it work. This is just calling roughing in your painting. Next, use the same pool of color that you're mixing, the blue of the sky. I can add a little bit.
There's nothing to stop here.
Airplane mode. That's great. I'm going to mix a little bit of blue and see what I've got. I can do that. That seems okay. Make it more fluid. The blues are, I used a little bit of phthalo blue. It's my warm blue, just a touch.
There's nothing to stop here.
Hey Siri.
I can hear that. Yeah, I wasn't talking to you.
That's my middle value in the ocean that I'm seeing. I'm going to leave some of this for later. Get my foreground colors. I'm mixing a little cadmium yellow medium with red.
You're upside down.
Am I going upside down? Here, I'll turn around. I can't stand on my head.
If you're a Laguna artist, you can
Yes.
stand on your head.
I can't. I can't make magic.
Oh, yes.
got this warm greenish sand in this scene. So I'm gonna render that.
Could you zoom in? Thank you.
And this gets warmer, so I add a little bit of orange in that. A little bit of cadmium red. I hate new brushes. Should have thought that through. Another second value, the darkest darks, medium value here in the foreground, and my ocean deep, my distant ocean. And I just mix in the same pools. I always shift them to the warm or cool in the same pools that I have on there. I don't wipe them out. It tends to help integrate the palette or the color harmony of the painting. Yeah, I'm glad I have somebody to explain in English.
Oh, I'm not painting
I'm
this
bad.
way.
I lied when I said I could chew gum and paint it at the same time. Stop me at any moment and let me know if you need
You're doing great.
anything.
You're doing
Yeah.
great.
All right, thank you. More mixing area, push everything out. This middle distance has a little bit of a cooler red in here, so I'm going to help me reestablish this rock in here. Lighten that up.
normally when I paint outside, it varies from time to time, but I try to get everything in the first 45 minutes, design-wise. And at that point, with the values and the painting with color on every surface, I'll decide at that point whether it's worth proceeding, or else wipe it off and use it, use the panel for something else a later day. But it's always good to see the relationships of values first. I'm not really concerned about color so much. You can see it's close, but it's kind of wonky. There's a lot of grays in there that don't really work. But as you apply paint over that at some point, it begins to develop a realism. And I'm a realistic painter. I don't like painting abstract, French Impressionist kind of images. I like showing the viewer the feeling of the space at the time I'm painting it. So I tend to go in that direction. Close enough. Down a little bit. Has a little tinge of green in there, so I look at that, and if you see it, I know it's hard for everybody to see, but in that lit portion of the rock, you see gray. I mean, gray is a light black, right? Everybody thinks of that. But if you look closely, especially in nature, you can follow cues on where to shift it to a warm or cool, dark or light. You just have to observe it more closely and just decide. I think in this instance I see gray, but I also see a greenish cast to it. I see that in the rocks too. It's a warm color in the shadows of the rock. And the green will help shift it, greenish yellow. So, if I paint that, I think that's closer to what I see rather than just straight gray, pure gray. It's a gray, but it's shifted to a cool greenish yellow. And that's partly because the rock has that sedimentary kind of quality to the painting, to the rock. So I'll try to establish that design in here. It's a real dramatic feeling of the face of that cliff. That's really where my eye tends to lead me to, because it's that contrast of dark and light that's happening through here that's leading my eye through. And this rock is there. It's got a nice bluish cast shadow that I'll introduce, but it's not as important. It's almost like a secondary actor in the play, So. This kind of starts about here. I'm using as large a brush as I can possibly handle, even with some of these small details at first. It's better to go large brush. This is a 6. You can use up to an 8 usually for this size painting, and do as much of that as you can with a large painting like you guys are doing. You're doing it here on the left. You're using a nice big brush. Allows you to be more expressive.
It's a good one.
Yeah, and you're not worried too much about detail at this stage. not yet.
I'm liking it, look at this.
Yeah,
I
you're
like
doing
it.
great.
I like it.
Good.
I think that's what matters.
Just-
What's it for you? Whatever it is, yeah, I like that.
I usually use my whites at the very end, so the surf and the foam in the surf is gonna happen later. Does anybody know what the foam consists of that makes it white? Has anybody ever thought of that? I just thought about it a few weeks ago.
Air?
This.
It's air, it's bubbles.
Yeah, the shiny.
It's individual bubbles that are being created through the frothiness of the ocean that's reflecting the sun and lighting only a certain angle of that little bubble. There's millions of them that create foam. So you start thinking, you think about physics when you paint, you know, how light interacts with objects, with the surf, with the rock, with the tree. And those little things are what makes it more alive to you. And then you can reproduce it much easier. Just really loosely going to create a little bit of highlights on these rocks. I'm not even trying to render rocks. I'm just trying to create this illusion what these rocks do. Shouldn't be using light colors yet, but I will actually go back to my rocks and try to reestablish some true colors. Probably I'm going to de-emphasize this rock over here and push it back. So I'm going to do a little bit more into the sky. And I want a clean brush at this point. I've laid in about as much as I want with my big shapes. Now I want to go I usually go from top to bottom. The sky's an important thing because once you put in a color, it changes every other color next to it, adjacent, both value and warmth and coolness. You know, you start to see that relationship. So any color you put down, you have to see it from the light of the adjacent tone or color. So I'm going to go ahead and get some of this truer, warm color of the sky in here. The value is correct, so I'll try to pick up on that value and adjust it. Well, this isn't quite done, but yeah, maybe that's a little better. And having that as an undertone, that green, that shows up actually in the mixture of the second color you lay on top. That starts to interact with that. So you just mix it right on top. first demo I ever attended was with Jeff Sewell. He's a pretty famous artist in Laguna Beach. He, this is 10 years ago. He always taught me to, when you're doing your sky, pull it down and do some brushwork in there, because the vibration of that color interacting with another color underneath is actually what the sky does. It's not a solid color. And it actually helps pull your painting down to your focus, focal as well.
So light travels.
Yeah, travels down, right? The rays, and that's physics again. It's physics of light. And I always try to create this sky that has movement. This one, the sky is de-emphasized, so I'm not really trying to do too much to movement in the sky, but I do want to have the feeling of the sky coming down and bringing your eye down. You got a call. Uh-oh. It's my wife. Bring home the pizza. I want to add a little bit of yellow to that pool and white. Kind of blend into that green cast that's going down into the distant light, right? It's being diffused by atmosphere, so it's picking up color differently on the horizon because it's the most distant sky you're seeing. Actually, you're seeing this has distance as well. The sky above you is much bluer than what's in the distance. Yeah, I just wanted to reestablish that horizon and the way the shape of the cliff really works. Kind of blend it in now, even though that's really fighting the color underneath, but that's okay. And then there's actually a distant landform, which is Dana Point, the headlands of Dana Point, way in the distance.
Yeah.
So I'll use a little bit of my phthalo blue and a little green, or excuse me, a little red. And try to, in the distance here, maybe a little darker. Just a tad bit lighter, so I'll contrast. And I have just this little hint of a cliff back in this distance while I painted that horizon with a little lighter yellow. Comes down here. Okay, so I'm good with that for now. I'll probably want to blend a little bit of that blue in there. It's a little wonky there. I'll use my blue while I'm at it for the shadow of this rock. It's a blurry photo, but I can see what's going on a little bit. Okay. The blue in the sand is going to also, the mother color has to be, mother color is the shadow reflected from the sky onto the surface. So if it's being reflected onto the surface or beaming down onto the surface, it has the color of the sand as well. So it picks up, you have to have the mother color of the sand in order to create the shadow on the sand. If that makes sense. It's just, the mother color is just the base color, and then what you're mixing it with. If it's on a leaf, it's going to be different, almost like a phthalo green. I'd have to show you. But I'm not good at explaining color theory. I just paint what I see.
But what you feel.
But you have to be realistic. You have to be, you know, if you're going to paint a ship, you have to know how to paint masts and rigging and be accurate with it, or else somebody's going to point it out to you, right? So you're trying to be as real, not realistic, but as accurate and true as you can possibly be, and believable. The believability is important. So this here, I need to redo this rock and push it back. So I can do it simply by bringing it down. That's the beauty of oil painting, is you can always paint over. If you're doing watercolor, you're dead. You're not going to make it if you keep trying to fix stuff. So, color in the sand is kind of greenish cast. I'll go into that pool, add a little bit of my violet or blue into it to see if I can establish a shadow color that's accurate. Need to bring that down a little bit, that's all right. It's going to be more of a white. Shadow starts about here. Need a little bit more blue on that. Figure it out as I go. How are we doing on time?
Break.
Perfect.
Break time?
Yeah.
All right, well,
Yes, you can do that.
I'm almost finished with my rough, but I'll keep going if you want to take a coffee break,
Okay.
relax, and
Right.
decompress from all that information. I don't know how much information you're doing today. Asked to paint called the Padawan Plein Air Painters. I should be finishing this painting up. How much time do you have?
We have time on watch.
Oh, you guys, okay. But, yeah, they called me, they kept calling me Master, so I kept calling them Padawans, like in Star Wars. So it's called the Padawan Plein Air Painters.
Okay.
We have fun.
That's so much fun.
That's the fun
camaraderie.
part of painting, is painting with people.
I like painting with people.
I don't like painting in studio. I dread it. And whenever I take a commission, I always tell them I'm going to paint what I want to paint, because I don't want to spend hours and hours just fiddling, spinning my wheels on a painting that they want, and to please them. I want to please myself. That's why I started painting, was I wanted to travel, and rather than taking photographs, I wanted to actually sit and draw or paint and really feel and experience the place in a more intimate way by painting, because you focus in on it so much more when you write or you experience a place in many different levels.
That's true.
So that's important to paint, regardless of your experience, your quality of your painting, you're experiencing the place you're painting. That's what the most important part of it is.
Tell me, do you paint oil?
What?
Do you paint in oil?
Mm-hmm.
Do your paints dry out after 15 years in a tube?
In 15 years in the tube?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they will decay in the
Okay.
tube.
Once they're opened, it will start to deteriorate, right?
They'll deteriorate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Looks like that.
The oil starts to dry up regardless, even if they're in tin or whatever. Yeah. So I'm gonna start doing a little bit of the detail of this rock here and show you. I've been practicing doing a lot of knife work lately. I know. So it's not gonna be,
How long have you had that palette? And you keep it like that?
I've only been painting 10 years, and this I bought about 7 years ago. And this
Class.
paint, I cleaned it once between that time, so this is probably about 4 or 5 years worth.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, something like
Oh, so you just keep that little circle in the middle
that.
there
It keeps
for-
drying up and I add to it.
Oh.
I like seeing the mess in my palette.
Is that oil?
This is a total mess, I know,
No.
but artists should be messy. It shouldn't be about precision. And we're not engineers. We're creative. So when I see that, I see all these various grays and blues. So it makes me excited when I see that. My studio is pretty clean and organized, but
Is that
palette
oil?
should be messy. It's oil, yes.
Okay, thanks.
What time of day did you take your reference photo?
It was kind of like in a morning, like at 9, 10 o'clock, I think this was. This is the east, it's coming, rising over and heading towards Catalina this way, that way. So it was like counter light in the morning.
Looking at Dana Point.
Yes, towards Dana Point, towards the south.
It wasn't the montage, it was after the montage?
I'm sorry?
Was it after the montage?
No, before, going south. It's near Pearl Street,
Uh-huh.
that area. Pearl Street, Moss Point, Woods Cove, and then farther south is
Montage.
Aliso Beach.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really reconstructed Aliso, didn't they?
They what?
Kind of ruined Aliso.
Um,
The water district?
oh, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, I've got to
Can't tell you
get back.
that.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
Used to go up twice a
So
week.
I'm gonna mix a little bit of a pool of, I'm using my knife now, just so I wanna create this, it's almost like paint by numbers, right, before. Now I'm gonna start thinking about, getting touches of, or tonalities and in nice broad, emphatic, kind of expressive knife work. And I just, feel my colors out and see what colors I need to add or subtract to get the values that I see in the photo, which is, I'm imagining being outdoors and seeing that, but it's all an illusion. I'm making stuff up in my mind as I go. I'm not nuts. But I see this little cast of blues, violets, I should say. And I can also express the edges of that rock. So you see how that's kind of wonky, that's kind of curved. I don't want that, I want it straight. So I'm gonna touch that and give it an edge. And I can do that with a knife much easier than I can with a brush. And creates a harder edge. You gotta be steady, slow, and then just lift it, you know, lay it down, bring it up, across, and leave it alone. You're not trying to, this is like a stairwell coming down. That's why it has that shape. But, you know, I'm not gonna really show that. I just keep mixing color. The darkest dark for me is ultramarine blue and burnt sienna.
Not
That's
alizarin crimson?
not alizarin crimson, that's too warm. So I want a cool dark.
So it's what colors again?
Burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. This is the darkest dark right here that I'm going to use.
Okay.
So I'm just going to try to be expressive with it and contrast that, but it's very subtle shifts in the color. And you see how that texture adds to the realism, right?
Uh-huh.
This is where it becomes fun. We want fun, right? The fun is in the painting and the expression of it. And I'm going to focus my attention on this area right in here to see if I can create, it's much darker on the base of this. I'm going to express that edge. Oops, here you got any pink. Maybe a little bit of color shifts that happen within the mix on the palette knife, but that's the kind of the interesting part of knife is it kind of behaves by itself. You know, you have happy little accidents, like Bob Ross would say. And that creates realism because there's all this mixture of colors within colors that create this illusion of realism. I'm getting my darkest dark within that shape. See how that much more realistic that rock is? It's really doing it by itself. You just have to draw it out of the knife. Sometimes you can scumbling in it with the knife, sometimes add to it. I also use this this tool. It's a rubber nib, not a brush, it's just a rubber nib. And I can actually draw with it, you know, take paint out. If I don't want all that white, I can, or add to it, I can add it with this. It creates this illusion of realism too. Sometimes you can create some nice effects. I didn't want that, but Siri. All right.
Just a second, just a second.
This is a little warmer down at the bottom here because it's actually reflecting the light back onto the rock. It's reflected light. So it's a little warmer in these last two rocks than it is over there. It's really subtle, but if you look at it close, you'll see it. So I'm adding a little bit more red into that mix. And that'll bring it also forward. It shifts it closer to you because it's warmer. Whereas this rock, I'm going to kind of de-emphasize it. But it has a lot more luminosity. It's reflected light in there. So I'm going to mix in a little bit of lighter pool into my mother color of the reddish dark color to gray it down, and I'll see what I can get. Something like that. That one backs off. Okay, I'm going to add highlights to that later on with my knife. Getting some of that warm colors in here too. This rock. I'm always cheap with my paint, so I have to keep mixing, but these kind of gray out in this instance here. Yeah, I like that. Then I pulled my colors, I kind of scraped that and added it to the bottom of the palette so I can use that if I need a little bit of graying of the color. I can draw from that with the knife. Got a little gray blue here, a little warmer color, so I've got two nice pools. That makes a nice gray. And you can shift it to the warm or cool, like I said, it's a mother color. But you can shift it to darker by adding more ultramarine and burnt sienna mix to that, or you can shift it to warmer, what did I say, darker light by getting the ultramarine and burnt sienna, and warmer, cooler with adding yellow or red or whatever way you want it to shift in a particular value. So you're always using the same paint on the palette in order to get that harmony we were talking about. That harmony draws out of that mother color that's on your palette. I'm starting to sound like a color theorist. I don't really know about it, but you start to learn about that just by painting. Osmosis, I guess. So it's important for all of you to paint outside, is what I'm trying to say to you. It helps you build confidence and energy in your paintings, rather than from a photograph, which, if you saw the original one of that, you saw it before when I first started. The darks are dark. I mean, when you take a photograph, it's just too high contrast. It's not believable. I transitioned it to a believable photo in my Photoshop kind of program I have there. Anyway, let's see, what should I do here? Oh. Here. Had this pool of color I can use. could even put a little bit of surf on there. I might want to do that now anyway, because just to see if the colors are too dark or too light. If I put the surf white in there, it'll show on the dark surfaces if I'm correct or not. Because the adjacent color, like I mentioned, helps to establish that. And I never want a pure white. I always want to add a little color. This isn't a kind of a cool color, but it has yellow and greens in it and all sorts of stuff. I might add a little tinge of yellow in that mix, or red, just too yellow. This white mud will be the basis of the surf, and I can add to it later on, but should do it properly. I don't know how to use a knife yet really accurately, but it helps to get sloppy with it, but that's the beauty of it, is you can always with a knife make it work. I'm reintroducing or redrawing it with this palette knife too. I'm going to make this rock much smaller. That's all right. Take that tool, and voila, it's gone. I'll clean it up with a brush, so I'm not losing anything here. A lot of different colors in surf, especially around here, because it's getting, picking up the sand underneath, it's picking up light, it's picking up yellow of algae, whatever it is. And take my brush, which I should have cleaned. All I'm doing is playing with it now just to see how I can animate it and create movement. It's rough, but it establishes my values, I guess I'm saying right now. It's not quite the brilliance I need on the surf, but I'm redrawing the rocks. I'm getting some depth in this foreground. There's this part of the rock here that has this highlight. Now I'll add it with this kind of yellowish color here. Creates much more interesting that way it's not too hard edged. I think that helps to make it work.
Do you
Let's see.
sometimes come back after
Yeah.
the oils have dried and put in your white?
Yeah, I could do that, yeah. Or the knife will work after.
Will?
Yeah, even out in the field. I know it's hard to not make mud at this point and
Yeah.
make a dirty, muddy, gray color.
Mm-hmm.
But if you, the thicker the paint, the lighter the touch is the rule.
Yeah.
You know, load up your paint if you have to cover something, which I don't do. I'm really stingy with my paint right now. But if I really want to create that white with the knife, I could do it right now.
You could.
Yeah, but I want to build it up because I want to see the relationships
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
Light and darks.
When you look at your painting, it's different than what we're seeing up there on the projector.
Yeah,
the painting
the
is
projector is
way
not.
better. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
it's
beautiful.
YouTube's fault. Sorry. No, but it doesn't quite capture it in.
No, it doesn't
video,
exactly.
no.
I hadn't really looked at your painting until right
I mean,
now.
this is still dirty and kind of, I mean, I can go ahead and, you know, add a little bit of highlights in here with thick paint and impasto, and I need to add more paint, but still gray. Should add a little bit more highlights of that yellow. You build it up, you know,
Yeah, it's pretty.
and you create the realism of that. It still needs to be lighter, but I'm gonna leave it go. There's other stuff that's going on in here. Sand is often painted as warm, but not, you know, it's not always warm. It tends to be many colors. It's when you, yeah, I don't know if you've ever seen a painting with just all white, like somebody in bed with white linen. There's a famous Sorolla painting. It's called Mother and Child of Maria, his wife. Joaquin Sorolla was a famous Spanish, turn of the century, 1900s through the early 20s. That is one of the top, like John Singer Sargent type of painter. But he painted this huge 16 by, maybe, no, 10 by 12 painting of just two heads, Maria in bed with the baby, and it's his first child.
It's all shades of.
First time I saw it, I burst into tears because it's just amazingly, I saw it in Madrid, and it's just beautiful. But it's all white, but there's so much color in white. I mean, he painted white like no other.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Several years ago, there was a picture hanging in the La Jolla Art Museum.
Yeah.
There was a big white canvas and had a black thumbprint on it.
Yeah, the signature.
That was it. Now, that maybe gave me a whole different kind of reaction. I didn't bring it in.
I know, no, that was,
laugh.
that was a whole different end of the spectrum. Anyway, well, I was glad to see you guys. You can take it off.
Yes.
I'm losing audience, but I'll post it and send you a picture of the finished painting
Great.
so you can post it. Thank you for everything you've done, the video.